My sister slapped me in public. She had no idea I funded her wedding. The sound of the slap didn't echo, it lodged. Heat flared across my cheek, bright and humiliating, while the bridal boutique pretended to breathe. A saleswoman froze mid-smile. Our mother's hand flew to her necklace. My sister Melissa stood on the mirrored platform in a crystal-studded gown, arms still raised as if the air owed her another strike. "Leave," she hissed, eyes gleaming. "You're ruining my moment." I was holding her veil. That was the part that stung most. Not the slap, not the stares, but that I'd been doing exactly what she asked. Fetch Carrie softened the edges of her day like the unpaid assistant I'd somehow become. I didn't drop the veil. I set it down on the velvet bench as carefully as a flame near silk. "Okay," I said, and I walked out beneath chandeliers that looked like sugar cages. Outside, the afternoon light was too honest. I sat on the boutique steps with my face burning and my phone buzzing. My hands shook, but my mind was sharp in a way grief can't dull. Because here's what no one in that room knew. The card Melissa waved around like a magic wand wasn't hers. It was mine. The engagement dinner, the venue deposit, the flowers she'd pre-approved at triple the estimate, all me. Not our parents with their vague promises and tighter than they admit finances. Me, Amanda. The invisible engine of someone else's fairy tale. Inside the boutique, laughter resumed, brittle and polite. I opened my banking app. Cancel card. The button was small, almost shy. I pressed it. A tiny spinner twirled like a ballerina who'd learned to say no. Done. I exhaled for the first time all day. A minute later, a notification bloomed on my screen. Transaction declined, $20, $350 at Bridal Luxe. I almost laughed. The gown. Of course. Curiosity pulled me to the glass. Through the window, I saw Melissa at the counter. Lips pressed into a perfect bride's pout card extended like a scepter. The clerk ran it again. Another decline. Melissa's smile fractured. Our mother leaned in, whispering the kind of comfort that sounds like stage directions we'll call the bank sweetheart. The manager approached to practice sympathy, already fading. "If payment can't be made, we'll need the dress back." Melissa's face, queen, unseated. My cheeks still stung, but somewhere beneath the heat, something colder settled. Relief. Not joy, not revenge. Relief like an elevator landing on the right floor after years of stopping everywhere but mine. My phone vibrated. "Mom? Dad?" Then Melissa herself. I didn't answer. The fourth call, I took our mother voice tight, like a ribbon pulled too hard. "What have you done? Your sister almost fainted. They embarrassed us." I kept my tone steady. That was my card. I canceled it. Silence. Not shot calculation. Then the accusation slid out silk over knives. Selfish. Selfish. I pictured the line items stacked like bricks, venue, catering floral mock-ups. Custom invitations she rejected twice because the script felt less rich. Selfish must mean finally telling the truth. "I'm done paying," I said. "For everything." A muffled scuffle. Then Melissa's voice sharp enough to cut. "You're jealous? You always have been? You think ruining my wedding makes you important and everyone will still choose me?" The call clicked dead. I stared at the street until the bridal shop's reflections stopped doubling the sky. Here's the confession. Since this is what you came for, the slap wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing was how normal it felt. How familiar. The way my family's orbit expects me to be gravitational, hold everything, quietly pay for what shakes nod when I'm erased. I thought I could help without disappearing. I was wrong. The bus ride home blurred. I didn't cry. There's a kind of crying you do for show, and a kind you save for the shower drain. I had moved beyond both. By evening, another message arrived, the venue, polite and lethal payment overdue. Reservation will be canceled within 48 hours if balance not received. I let the email sit. If Melissa was building a castle, she could find her own bricks. Night came with the slow ache of a bruise blooming under skin. I made pasta in my small kitchen. The pot hissed like gossip, like the whispers I knew would start. I thought about the boutique, about the look on Melissa's face when no translated into public. I thought about the version of me who would have rushed in, apologized, with money taking the blame to keep peace. She didn't pick up the phone this time. Ask yourself, if your sister slapped you in public, then started back to a dream you paid for, would you keep financing the fantasy? Or would you pull one quiet lever and watch consequences arrive right on time? I turned the stove off and ate standing up. My cheek had cooled. My decision hadn't. Some stories end with a door slammed. Mine began with one opening out of a boutique into a life where no wasn't a betrayal. It was a boundary. And Melissa's fairy tale? It had always been made of borrowed glass. Tonight, it learned about gravity. By morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls stacked like bricks. Mom, Dad, Melissa. Even cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. They didn't want to check on me. They wanted to fix the embarrassment. Around 10 a.m., I finally picked up one call just to hear it. My mom's voice sliced through the line tight and frantic. "Do you know what you've done?" Melissa almost collapsed at the counter. The whole boutique was staring. I stared at the coffee in my mug, steam curling like a question. "That wasn't my problem," I said quietly. "What do you mean it's not your problem?" she snapped, outrage cracking her tone. "You embarrassed this family. You humiliated your sister on the most important day of her life." I took a slow breath. "The card was mine, Mom. I've been paying for all of it. Her gown, her dinners, her venue. It's been my money from the beginning." Silence, a dangerous kind. The kind I grew up with, the kind that meant someone was weighing how to turn blame back my way. When my mom finally spoke, Her words trembled with fury. You selfish girl? How dare you cut her off now, selfish? That word again. It was almost funny if you've spent months draining your own savings to fund someone else's fantasy. Apparently, the moment you stop is when you become selfish. Before I could answer, Melissa snatched the phone. Her voice was shrill, desperate, like glass cracking under pressure. You're jealous. That's what this is? You've always been jealous of me. You think ruining my wedding makes you better. Guess what? Everyone will still pick me over you. I didn't argue. What was the point? I simply said, from now on, Melissa, you pay for your own wedding. Consider this my final gift. Then I hung up. My hand shook not from fear this time, but release. An hour later, the first cracks appeared. An email from the venue, payment overdue. Reservation will be canceled within 48 hours if balance not received. I stared at the words. I almost laughed. For months, I'd been terrified of missing a payment, scrambling to juggle deadlines so Melissa wouldn't suspect. Now the debt had shifted where it belonged, onto her shoulders. By late afternoon, Melissa called again, voice pitched high with panic. The venue says the check bounced. What did you do? I sipped my coffee. I didn't do anything. I just stopped paying. You can't do this, she screamed. The wedding is in 2 weeks. The caterer, the flowers, the photographer, they're all waiting for money. I kept my voice calm, almost detached. That's your problem now, not mine. Then I hung up again. Word spread fast. Relatives texted the family group chat, confused and worried. Some had already booked flights. Others whispered that they'd heard from the caterer contract canceled. Apparently, Melissa's checks bounced there too. By the second day, Jacob's family, her fiancé's parents, were involved. They'd believed Melissa's story that our parents were funding everything. Now they were realizing not a single bill had come from them. Doubt had slipped into the foundation of her fairy tale and cracks were spreading. That evening, I sat in my apartment watching shadows stretch across the wall. My cheek still faintly ached from the slap, but the sting was nothing compared to the sharper realization blooming inside me I didn't have to play their game anymore. For the first time in years, the weight of everyone else's happiness wasn't on me. And Melissa, she was about to learn what it felt like to stand on her own feet, because I wasn't carrying her anymore. The third day after the boutique fiasco, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. My voicemail was already clogged with guilt trips and threats, but something told me to answer. Hello. The voice on the other end was low, strained. Amanda, this is Jacob. For a moment, I said nothing. Jacob, my sister's fiancé, the man who had smiled politely through Melissa's tantrums at family dinners, the man who thought he was marrying into some stable, supportive household. He cleared his throat. I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. Did you really pay for everything, the venue, the catering, the engagement dinner? I didn't hesitate. Yes, every bit of it. Melissa never paid a dime. My parents didn't either. It was all me. Silence stretched on the line, but it wasn't disbelief. It was realization, a slow, ugly dawning of what he'd agreed to marry. She told me her parents were covering the costs, he said finally. His voice was controlled, but I could hear anger beneath it. Anger at her, not me. She swore money wasn't an issue. Do you know how humiliating it was to stand in front of my parents and find out the payments weren't real? I pictured him jaw tight. Parents watching Melissa weaving excuses like silk that couldn't cover the truth. She lied, I said simply. His sigh was heavy, resigned. Makes me wonder what else she's lied about. Before I could reply, I heard Melissa's voice cut in shrill and desperate. She'd grabbed the phone. Jacob, don't listen to her. She's jealous. She's been jealous of me her whole life. She's trying to destroy us. But Jacob wasn't buying it anymore. His tone shifted colder now. Melissa, enough. I've seen the receipts. Amanda isn't lying. You don't understand? She cried, her voice cracking. I was going to pay her back. I just needed time. 7 months of time, Jacob snapped. Do you think I'm an idiot? You built this entire wedding on your sister's savings. You let me believe it was your parents. That's not a mistake, Melissa. That's deception. On my end, I stayed quiet. It felt wrong to intrude, but I couldn't hang up either. This was the sound of her perfect facade crumbling. Melissa sobbed, her words spilling out in broken gasps. I just wanted it to be perfect. I wanted you to be proud of me. My sister's trying to make me look bad. Jacob cut her off. His voice didn't rise, but the finality in it was sharper than a shout. What makes me proud is honesty, trust. And right now, I don't see either. There was a pause, the kind that feels like a knife twisting. Then Jacob's voice softened, almost regretful. If you can lie about something this big, Melissa, how can I believe anything else? Click. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, pulse racing. Not from fear, not even from victory, but from something heavier, vindication mixed with sorrow. Melissa had built her fairy tale on borrowed foundations, and now it was collapsing under her own weight. That evening, texts buzzed in from every corner of the family grapevine. A cousin whispered that Jacob's parents had confronted Melissa's lies. An aunt messaged, so it was you, paying all along. No wonder things don't add up. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who sacrificed without applause. Now the truth was out, and it wasn't me they pitied anymore. But the cruelest irony, Melissa still didn't see the difference. In her mind, she was the victim, and I was the villain who'd finally pulled the curtain back. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about Jacob's voice, the crack in his trust, the way Melissa's sobs turned frantic when she realized she couldn't spin her way out. For the first time, I wondered if the wedding would even happen at all. And deep down, I already knew the answer. 2 days later, I got the call I had been half expecting, half dreading. This time, the number wasn't unfamiliar. It was Jacob. His voice was calm, but there was a weight in it. Amanda, I need the truth one last time. No excuses, no sugarcoating. Did you really pay for everything, venue catering, the engagement dinner? I didn't even blink? Yes, Jacob. Every single payment came from me. Melissa hasn't put in a cent. Our parents either. It was all me. He sighed. I could hear muffled voices in the background, probably his parents. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from disbelief to something colder. She told me her family was wealthy, that her parents insisted on covering the bills. She made me believe I was marrying into stability. But standing there watching every check bounce, knowing the truth only because you admitted it. His voice broke. I trusted her. Before I could answer, Melissa's voice screeched through the line. She must have yanked the phone from him. She's lying. She's always hated me. She's jealous, Jacob. Can't you see? She's trying to ruin us. But Jacob didn't sound fooled anymore. His words sliced through her hysteria. I saw the receipts. I saw the emails. Amanda isn't lying, Melissa. You are. You let me believe a fantasy. Melissa's voice cracked, turning from rage to pleading. I was going to pay her back. I just needed time. I just wanted our wedding to be perfect. Jacob's patience finally snapped. His voice was sharp, final. No, you wanted to look perfect, and you used lies to get there. If you can lie about something this big, Melissa, what else have you lied about? Silence. The kind that doesn't wait for an answer. When Jacob spoke again, his tone was flat, resolute. The engagement is over. Melissa screamed actual guttural sobs, words broken by panic. No, you can't. Everyone's coming. The invitation's my dress. Jacob, please don't do this to me. But Jacob wasn't moved. His parents' voices hummed in the background, steadying him, pulling him away from her chaos. He said one last thing, calm and cold as steel. I won't marry someone who builds her life on deceit. Click. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. I should have felt triumph, relief, something. Instead, what I felt was strange, like standing in the eye of a storm that had just shifted course. Melissa's fairy tale hadn't just cracked, it had shattered. And all I'd done was stop funding it. Later that night, my phone lit up again, this time with messages from family. A cousin wrote, "So it's true? You pay for everything?" An aunt whispered that Jacob's family was furious at being lied to. Relatives who once fawned over Melissa were now circling like vultures hungry for gossip. And yet in the family group chat, my mom typed only one line, Amanda ruined everything. I stared at those words until the letters blurred. Not Melissa lied. Not Melissa slapped me in public. Not Melissa drained her sister's savings. Amanda ruined everything. For once, though, I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I knew the truth. Now they'd never side with me, no matter what. But here's what none of them saw: the foundation of Melissa's perfect life had been built on my silence. And now that silence was gone, the wedding wasn't just broken, it was buried. The morning of the wedding, the air should have been electric flowers, photographers, relatives buzzing with excitement. Instead, it was heavy, silent. Guests trickled into the reception hall, only to find bare tables, no decorations, and no food. I walked in quietly, almost like a ghost, just to see it for myself. My stomach tightened as I scanned the room. The venue Melissa had bragged about for months looked like a warehouse. No music, no laughter, just confusion. Relatives whispered in corners. Some flipped through their invitations as if to make sure they had the right place. Others shook their heads, muttering about flights and hotels they had paid for. Then I saw her. Melissa. She was pacing in a wrinkled rental dress, her hair messy, makeup streaked from tears. Her voice cracked as she snapped at anyone who dared to come close. It's just a delay. The flowers are on the way. The caterer got lost. Just sit down. Her lies sounded thinner than tissue paper. When her eyes landed on me, her face twisted. She pointed like I was the villain in her fairy tale. You did this. You ruined everything. All eyes turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I lifted my chin and said calmly, Melissa told you our parents were funding this wedding. That was a lie. I paid for everything. When she slapped me across the face in public, I stopped. And this, I gestured around the empty hall. Is the truth? She tried to hide. Gas rippled through the crowd. A cousin muttered, so that's why the checks bounced. An aunt shook her head, disappointed. Melissa's face went pale. She looked toward our parents for backup, but even they sat frozen, shame written all over their faces. And then the final blow came. Jacob walked in, not in a tuxedo, but in a plain black suit, his parents behind him. His voice carried through the hall. There is no wedding today. Melissa lied to me, to all of you. I won't marry someone who built her life on deceit. The room fell into stunned silence. Relatives grabbed their bags and filed out, whispering about wasted time and money. Some even demanded refunds for travel. Melissa collapsed into a chair, sobbing, her dress pooling around her, like a costume from a show that had ended too soon. Mom crouched beside her, stroking her hair. Dad glared at me, his voice low but sharp. This is on you, Amanda. I met his eyes without flinching. No, this is on her and on you for letting it happen. For the first time in my life, people weren't looking at me with pity. They were looking at me with respect. And Melissa, she had nothing left to hide behind. The hours after the ruined wedding played out like an earthquake. Not loud at first, but the aftershock spread through every corner of our family. Relatives who had flown in for the big day were furious. My phone buzzed with messages from cousins. What happened? Is the wedding still on? Why didn't you warn us? Some weren't even subtle. One aunt demanded, "Are you going to reimburse us for travel?" I didn't bother replying. The truth was already out in the open. Melissa's fairy tale had crumbled because it was built on lies. Back at my parents' house, I became the target. Mom called that evening, her voice hoarse from crying. "Amanda, you could have handled this differently. You didn't need to humiliate your sister like that." I almost laughed. Humiliate her. She had slapped me in front of strangers, treated me like dirt, and siphoned my savings dry. I reminded Mom of that word for word. She went quiet for a moment before snapping, "You're cruel. You've destroyed this family." Dad wasn't any better. His message was blunt. "You've made a mistake. You'll regret this when you're alone." But I wasn't alone. For once, I had my own back. The gossip spread like wildfire. Relatives whispered that Melissa was now the fallen princess of the family. A cousin told me Jacob's parents had already warned people in their community about her lies. "She's toxic," they said, and she dragged everyone down with her. Meanwhile, Melissa spiraled. Her social media went from showing off bridal fittings to vague posts about betrayal and jealousy. She even tried to spin it, claiming I ruined her life out of envy. But people weren't buying it. The receipts, the bounce checks, the canceled vendors, the silence from Jacob were all against her. Still, the worst blow came at a family dinner 2 weeks later. Mom and Dad invited me over. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway. The moment I walked in, Dad slammed a folder on the table bills, overdue notices, mortgage payments. "You need to step up," he said. "We can't carry this alone anymore. Melissa is devastated. If you don't help, we'll lose everything." I stared at the papers, then back at him. My voice was steady. "For years, I carried everything. I paid for Melissa's dreams while you turned a blind eye. I sacrificed my own life just to keep the peace. Not anymore. If you lose everything, it won't be because of me. It'll be because you bet on the wrong daughter." Mom's face flushed red. "Amanda, she's your sister. Family helps family." I felt a strange calm settle over me. Family also respects family. And you never respected me? So from now on, I'm done funding lies. The silence in that room was louder than any scream. For the first time, I walked out of my parents' house with nothing hanging over my shoulders. No guilt, no debt, no strings. The day I walked out of my parents' house felt like closing a book I had been forced to read for years. I didn't owe them anymore, not my money, not my silence, not my loyalty. For the first time, the chains were gone. I started small. The first paycheck I kept for myself felt unreal. No transfers to cover Melissa's bills, no checks mailed for my parents' mortgage. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the balance in my account, and I actually cried, not from sadness, but from relief. It was mine, all mine. With that freedom came choices I never thought I'd have. I signed up for a cooking class I had been eyeing for months. It was only once a week, but it reminded me what joy felt like when it wasn't tangled up in someone else's demands. I bought myself new sheets, a little luxury, that made my apartment feel like a sanctuary instead of a pit stop between crises. I even treated myself to a secondhand bike. The simple act of pedaling down the street without my phone buzzing with demands felt like flying. Meanwhile, Melissa's world unraveled fast. Relatives who once fawned over her stopped answering her calls. A cousin whispered to me that Jacob's family had spread the word Melissa was a liar, a manipulator, and someone who built her whole future on her sister's back. The humiliation was so bad that she stopped showing up at church and family events. And my parents' reality caught up with them. The mortgage bills piled up, the utilities went unpaid, and the credit cards maxed out. They called me twice a week at first, begging, then demanding. I let the calls go to voicemail. I listened once, Dad's voice hard and cold. "Amanda, you think you're strong, but family always comes back together. You'll see." I deleted it and blocked the number. Every time guilt tried to creep in, I reminded myself they weren't really asking for help. They were asking me to be their safety net again. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my peace anymore. One night, as I stirred pasta in my tiny kitchen, it hit me. I hadn't just canceled a credit card that day in the boutique. I had canceled years of being used, dismissed, and undervalued. For once, my life wasn't about holding up other people's dreams. It was about building mine. And the silence they left behind didn't feel empty. It felt like freedom. I thought the silence meant it was over, that they'd finally leave me alone. But Melissa wasn't done. One Friday night, I was scrolling through my phone when a notification popped up, a Facebook live stream. Melissa. Against my better judgment, I tapped it. She was sitting in her car, mascara streaked down her cheeks, voice shaking, but loud enough for hundreds of viewers. "I've been betrayed," she sobbed. "My own sister destroyed my wedding, ruined my engagement, and abandoned our parents when they needed her most. She's jealous. She's always been jealous. And now she's heartless too." The comments poured in, some sympathetic, others brutal. "Family should stick together. She sounds toxic." But then came one that made my stomach drop. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from Jacob's mother. She didn't ruin anything. Your lies did. The live stream froze for a moment, and Melissa's face crumpled. But she kept going, desperate now, saying things she'd never dared to say in front of me. "You know why my parents always supported me? Because Amanda never asked for anything. She was the quiet one, the easy one. I needed more, so they gave me more. That's just how it was." My breath caught in my throat. She thought she was defending herself. But all she did was confess the truth. I had suspected my whole life. It wasn't that they didn't notice me. It was that they noticed I didn't complain, and they exploited it. The chat exploded. "That's not fair." "So you admit it. She paid for your wedding, and you slapped her. Melissa ended the stream abruptly, but the damage was done. Screenshots were already circulating. By the next morning, the family group chat was chaos. Cousins shared clips, aunts scolded Melissa publicly, uncles called her entitled. For the first time, the tide had turned. It wasn't me against everyone anymore. It was Melissa against herself. Later that day, she showed up at my bakery. Yes, she actually came standing outside the glass door in sunglasses trying to hide her face. Customers glanced at her curiously, recognizing the girl from the viral meltdown. She slipped inside and hissed under her breath. "We need to talk." I kept my voice calm. "There's nothing left to talk about." Her hands trembled. "Please, Amanda, help me fix this. I can't survive without you. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything." I stared at her for a long moment. She was right, I didn't understand. Because I had never been given the chance to fall apart. I was always the one expected to hold everything together. So I said the words that ended it once and for all. "I forgive the debt, but not the damage. You'll have to live with what you chose." Her face crumpled. She whispered something like, "You'll regret this," before storming out. But I didn't regret it. Not for a second. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when the letter arrived. No return address, just my name scrawled across the envelope in handwriting I knew too well, my dad's. My hands trembled as I slid a finger under the flap. For a moment, I considered throwing it straight in the trash. But curiosity won. The paper was yellowed, lined the same kind Dad used for grocery lists when we were kids. His handwriting was uneven, rushed. "Nicole," it began. "If this is goodbye, then there's something you never knew." I froze. He'd never called me Nicole in writing before, only Mandy or Kiddo. The seriousness of it made my stomach knot. "Your sister's first birthday. We couldn't afford gifts for both of you. We chose her. And we kept choosing. Not because she needed it more, but because you didn't ask. You were quiet. You were easy. You never complained. It made it easier to give to the one who made noise." My chest tightened. My suspicions were laid bare in ink. "That doesn't mean we were right. It means we were selfish, lazy. You grew up thinking we didn't see you, but we did. We just decided it was simpler to ignore what you wanted. And every time you stayed silent, we convinced ourselves it was fine. It wasn't. We failed you." Tears blurred the words, but I forced myself to keep reading. "I watched you grow into the strongest person in this family. I saw it. I just never said it. I thought there would be time. Time to make it right. Time to explain. Time to tell you that you were the one we should have invested in. But time ran out, and I'm sorry for everything. No signature. No love, Dad. Just that abrupt ending, like even in confession, he couldn't give me the closure I deserved." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter, the rain tapping the windows like it was trying to echo the ache inside me. A part of me wanted to scream, to burn it, to throw it away. Another part wanted to frame it, proof that my pain wasn't imagined. For years, I thought maybe they didn't realize. Maybe they just didn't notice how much they gave Melissa while I stood in the shadows. But they knew. They noticed. And they still chose her. The betrayal cut deeper than any slap, any harsh word. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a decision. A choice made over and over again. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and set it in the drawer with the rest of the receipts. The unpaid debts, the quiet evidence of a life built on my silence. That night, my husband asked if I was okay. I wrapped my arms around his waist and whispered, "We're never going back, are we?" He kissed the top of my head. "No, we're not." By the time spring came, the silence in my life didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like peace. We moved into a modest house with a lemon tree in the backyard. My son planted carrots in the dirt patch, his hands messy with soil, grinning as if he'd discovered treasure. My husband painted the walls a soft cream, humming while he worked. The air smelled like new beginnings, not old debts. I hadn't heard from my parents or Melissa in months. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laden voicemails. Sometimes I'd wonder where they were, if the storage unit was still full of their things, if Melissa still scrolled through social media pretending everything was fine. But the thoughts passed like clouds. They no longer held weight over me. One evening, as I sipped coffee on the back steps, I remembered the boutique. The sting of Melissa slapped the heat in my cheeks as strangers stared. I realized that moment had been a door. I walked through it that day and I never went back. The letter from Dad stayed in the drawer, but I didn't reread it. I didn't need to. The truth was written into every choice I made. Now choices for me, for my husband, for my son, not for them. Sometimes people assume cutting off family is dramatic, a war with shouting and slammed doors. But the real ending is quiet. It's the birthday where no one forgets, because the people who matter are already there. It's the night you fall asleep without your phone buzzing, without the dread of what crisis tomorrow will bring. It's waking up and realizing your peace is intact. I wasn't the bitter sister anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was simply Amanda, and for the first time that was enough. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go. Thanks for watching this story. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't payback. It's walking away with your peace. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with what you'd have done.